That is a great question. Most people think the state auditor audits in Indiana, and I spend a lot of time explaining that in Indiana, the state auditor is the state's chief financial officer. So we don't audit in the traditional sense. And so oftentimes after I explain that, they're more willing to talk to me and open up a little bit. And so as the state's chief financial officer, my role is to do all the accounting and reporting for the state, maintain the budgets, pay all the bills, pay all the state's 30,000 employees, as well as work closely with local units of government. We pass all the gas tax, the local income tax down to local units of government, cities, towns, counties. And I just got this job last year. I was appointed by Governor Holcomb to take Suzanne Crouch's place. So I'm fairly new in the job, and so I love it. The first CPA to ever hold the position, and so I'm excited to get in and see what we can do. As the state's chief financial officer, we house all of the state's financial data. And so as a result, one of my initiatives is to enhance transparency. Indiana already had an award-winning transparency site. I was fortunate enough to inherit that from the previous state auditors, Suzanne Crouch and Tim Berry. And so my goal was just to enhance that and make more data available, make the data that we currently have more visually appealing with graphs, charts, data, have interactive charts. And so we just recently released our enhancement of phase one. We started by working with the governor's team. We checked out other states. Ohio just put in open checkbook for $1.3 million. We were able to do our phase one with a third of that cost, as well as we're going to be doing phase two and phase three with the final cost still barely half of what Ohio did. And so I worked with the governor's management of Performance Hub and his Office of Technology. And so we've heard great feedback, employee salaries, contracts, vendor data. If you want to know the top 10 vendors the state pays, it's on there, the employees. And so I think transparency is a state of mind. The more transparent you are, the better government will be, because it's fiscal responsible to be transparent. But I think transparency encourages fiscal responsibility when you know that every decision you make is going to be out available for everybody to see. That's a great question. I like to call it Indiana's reasonable reserve, but Hoosiers have a lot of mixed feelings about Indiana having $1.8 billion. I like to say we have 11.5% of 1 year's current expenditures in the bank. And so it's important to have that reserve, because we have no idea when we will have an emergency, an economic downturn, and Indiana will be prepared when that happens to continue to provide services to our Hoosiers when oftentimes they need more. And so a lot of people believe that $1.8 billion should be going to infrastructure or education or school safety or mental health. The list goes on and on. However, I would not advocate using that for one-time purpose, because once it's gone, then we don't have the luxury to sit here in Indiana and say we could weather a storm or we could get through an emergency, because we'd have to cut services that are vital to provide other services. So by having just that, if we would stop receiving revenue, that $1.8 billion would last about 43 days. And so it is important that we can continue to operate during those times so that we can be proactive rather than reactive. And so I also think it's important, and a lot of people don't think about it, but having that reserve lets us have a AAA credit rating, and that saves us money on interest, but it also, I believe, keeps our economy strong, because whether you're buying a house or a business, you know that we are not going to knee-jerk react and raise your taxes or not be able to pay our bills or pay our state employees, because we have the money in the bank to provide those services.